November about the Bernie Sanders campaign. And you know, in Mexico has it's just one example of a country where they're looking to what's happening here. You know, they recently elected a left president, a left-ish president, and there's a lot that can be said about Manuel Lopez Obrador. But everyone who I was talking to, who were left activists in Mexico, kept emphasizing to me, you know, I was wondering why, you know, okay, they pay attention to the U.S., I guess everybody around the world pays attention to the U.S., the cultural and political hegemon, so of course they're paying attention. But people kept talking to me about why they thought that the Bernie campaign was so important in Mexico, because they said that there is a boot on the neck of Lopez Obrador, or anyone who is the president or any social movement in Mexico, and that boot is the U.S. imperial hegemon. They're so limited in what they can do because there is this imperialist pressure coming on them from the United States. And I've heard similar things from socialists in Brazil and in all kinds of places around the world, especially in the global south, but also in Europe and around the world. And so this is a really critical question. In some ways, it made me a little more nervous because I was like looking around the U.S. and I'm like, yeah, we got a big responsibility. And then like Mexicans are telling me, no, you got to represent for us too. Like we're really counting on you guys. And so it is a critical question. And I would say that it's a critical question for DSA in particular to make ties to international socialist organizations. I mean, the socialist movement is a global movement. The working class is global. We know that we're not just concerned with like the working class within these arbitrarily drawn borders of the United States. You know, our kinship is with all the working people around the world. And so this is a really critical thing for us to be doing, is to building up these international ties and recognize that what we're doing here has global ramifications. So you know, no pressure, but this is one of the most critical questions that we're facing.
So recently I visited the UK for the Labour Party conference to meet with comrades and, as you said, try to strengthen that connection across borders with the working class in the UK. And yeah, they similarly said, you know, the Sanders win would be an incredible change globally. It would have global implications because we live in the imperialist core and everything. So when Labour lost, when Corbyn did lose, that really was a blow to the global left. And now they really are all turning to us. They really see us as the last chance. We're obviously not the last chance, but they really see this Sanders campaign as an important opportunity for us. So, like you said, I think it's really important that we strengthen these connections, strengthen this international solidarity, because everyone's counting on us.
And so I have the question of envisioning the role of DSA and YDSA under a Sanders presidency.
Yeah. There's going to be a ton of work for us. We feel the work right now we're doing to elect Sanders, and that's a ton. We're traveling across state lines, across city lines, to talk to strangers about why they should buy into democratic socialism, and that's exhausting. But we all know that it's going to be so much more work that YDSA and DSA is going to have to do to work alongside the Sanders administration to organize for a socialist society. And in my opinion, we've already started some of that work. We have begun to elect class struggle candidates. We have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in Congress. That was the fight of a lifetime in Queens, and I'm happy to do it again. And we have Julia Salazar in New York as well. We have Heidi Klum running in Texas. Incredible, and a farmer and a socialist organizer. We have to keep running these people from within our organization that are beholden to us, not to capital, not to the Democratic Party, that come organically from within this organization, and that means people in this room. We're going to have to count on each other to be in part of that Sanders administration once we win. So some of you will have to prepare for that. I'll make sure you're prepared for that. We're also going to have to struggle in our workplaces. I talked about the rank and file strategy a little bit. I'm going to be struggling within my nurses union to win whatever we're going to have to win at that point. We don't know what we're going to face. There's people in this room who are going to become teachers and engage in a fight like they did in Chicago back in October and back in 2012. We're going to be struggling within logistics, wherever it makes sense to struggle. So we as socialist organizers, experienced organizers, are going to have to continue that fight of a lifetime. And then we're also going to have to organize all sorts of pressure campaigns. We don't quite know what that looks like yet, but we have to be prepared to respond really, really rapidly to that. But those are like the three things that I think we're going to have to work hardest on in DSA and YDSA.
You heard it here first from the boss. So get ready. You have your marching orders. Truthfully. Well, the only thing that I would add is I think DSA, after 2016, you all became a political home for a great many people who, who have been animated by Senator Sanders, and I think you all are going to have to prepare for that once again, for a massive increase in membership. I think you all are going to have to prepare to be in real coalition and be a big part of forming the core of a flourishing left, and that includes expanding. I've been in and I'm not going to apologize for this. I've been to DSAs and YDSAs now across the country, and they look racially, generally the same. And so you all are going to have to, and this is a part of the work, right? You all are where you are. You all couldn't predict who would flood your ranks, and in order for you all to really, really be a big part of the flourishing left, across race, class, gender, ethnicity, sexuality, you all are going to have to contend with, the lack of racial diversity in many of you all's college chapters and many of you all's other chapters. And I think that's an exciting piece of the work that you all are going to be doing. And I bring that up acutely because it's not only a moral imperative, but it's also absolutely a strategic one. We're going to have to build a flank that is strong, that is diverse, that is native, that is, and I've actually had the privilege now, through the campaign, of seeing it. This is a movement of movements, and we are remembering what was dismembered from us, and this is an exciting time, and we've got to be open. The last thing I'll say is, I think DSA has a particular duty, mandate, to continue to provide vision for where we go forward. So there is holding an accountability to the present and us getting everything, this ambitious political program executed. And what is the vision forward? Continue to animate so that people have something to look forward to. And that is a key part of, don't lie, right? We're not going towards utopia, but we've got to have, in order to get people to build a boat, they must long for the sea. And so we've got to continue to think about animating it. What does it look like? What does it look like in real ways for people? And I think DSA has an exciting opportunity to paint that picture of that vision. One of the reasons Andrew Yang was successful in some ways in pulling people from our base and bringing new people in, right, is because I think they saw in what he was talking about a world without work, right? And what he is talking about, we should not ignore fully, right? We shouldn't ignore at all, right? The possibility or even the probability of a world without work. He was predicting that we would want to kill all the rich people, so he's going to give us $12,000 a year. And he was also really acutely identifying that we are going to be in a world where wages can no longer be tied to work because there will be no work. And so there are questions that we can engage with for people that really make sense to them now, because a lot of black people, poor people, are living in worlds without work right now. And so us being able to start to talk about that in a futurist sense only allows us to build a strong foundation for people to come in and say, this does make sense because you're thinking about things in the future.
Briefly respond to this question before we move on. I mean, I think under a Sanders presidency, we will be in a difficult position because, as we know, there are all kinds of structural barriers to making change. You take the office of the White House, ones that we haven't even thought about before because we've never been in this situation before. And so you know, there are conservatizing pressures within the White House, certainly, and so there will probably be moments where we'll need to push President Bernie Sanders, but we also should recognize that we'll be in a situation that's, you know, in Chile in 1970, they called Salvador Allende compañero presidente, like, you know, comrade president.
Yeah.
And that is the situation that we will be in. He's a comrade. And so we shouldn't see ourselves as, yeah, Philip's having a little moment up here just thinking about President Comrade Bernie Sanders. But so, you know, that means something to have a comrade president. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden, like, we are his, you know, the leftists who are going to be in the position to just call him out and like tell it, like, he's also going to be, he's one of us. Like, as I said before, he was in rooms like this one, you know, 50 some years ago. He came to this work in the same way that we do and shares a kind of basic analysis about the way that the world works in the same way that we do, understands some of the pressures, and so we're going to have to you know, approach his campaign as such, as you know, one of our own in the White House. That, again, that doesn't mean that there's not some kind of pushing that will have to be involved, as it has, you know, during the campaign. And you know, Philip, as you know, you've said, you know, you haven't always agreed with everything that's happened in the campaign thus far. None of us have, and we've you know, made our criticisms known when they're there. But he's one of our own who is running this campaign and who's going to be in the White House, and so we have to approach him in that way. And that's, you know, there's no easy blueprint about how we should be, you know, what we should do in every single situation. We're going to have to figure that out on the fly. But that has to be our approach to his campaign and to his presidency. Before we move on to the questions, just a real quick on the last one about the kind of dejection that people feel in politics. I mean, again, this is one of the most central questions that we're facing right now. I know when I was on the doors in Iowa, I went to Iowa 3 times, and I was talking to people, working class folks, who I would tell them, you know, about Bernie. They didn't know much about Bernie. They didn't know much about politics, and I would tell them what his agenda was. And it wasn't that they, a lot of them disagreed with what I was saying. It's like I was trying to sell them a unicorn or something. Like they thought I was trying to sell them like a bill of goods. Like, you know, they're like, okay, you know, free Medicare for everybody, like free college for everybody. You're going to stop these? Well, yeah, sure you will. Okay, well, you know, you probably got a bridge that you want to sell me somewhere. So we have to, and again, like the folks in this room, the folks from YDSA and DSA are the ones who are going to have to not just work for the election of Bernie Sanders and for, you know, rank and file unionism, whatever. It's also about rebuilding people's belief that we can actually change the world, that these things are not impossible for you, that we can win them. And we can win much more than what we're talking about. And so it's our job to rebuild that sense in people and to convince people that indeed, you know, a better world is possible and that we can win it together. So let's take some more questions. Oh wow, all of a sudden we got a bunch of them. How about there? Yes. Maroon sweater.
Hi, my name is Raymond. I'm a student organizer at AU, and I really kind of have a couple of comments actually. Not really a question, now that you're giving us permission.
90 seconds though,
90 seconds. No, I just want to say, kind of going back to what you were saying about like being in college and not radicalizing right away, I think it's kind of important also though to acknowledge POCs, especially the POCs that are in the room, just because for us at least, we don't, obviously we're not white and we're oppressed in this country, and so we don't have the privilege of obviously taking our time to radicalize. And I honestly would urge all of the white comrades in this room to get your shit together and organize with your POC communities on campus. Because for us, we're like the first ones to get fucked over if Bernie doesn't win. And so it's extremely important for everybody, and including myself of course, to organize in POC communities specifically.
Yeah, the black hoodie over there.